Hey, I'm Josh. Thanks for joining me. In February, I acquired one gigantic new board game. I also acquired a couple of new video games that turned out to be big hits. I played two new-to-me board games, as well as one board game that I haven't played in years and years, so I haven't talked about yet on this channel. And then there were 5 other board games I played that I've previously talked about. So it was overall a really good gaming month in the month of February. Now, the game that I acquired was another game that I had kickstarted, actually. So I mentioned last month that I broke my 5-year Kickstarter freeze when I pledged for the expansion for Planet Unknown called Planet Unknown Supermoons, or Supermoon. And then I decided to jump in on this Thunder Road Vendetta Kickstarter as well in order to get the big Maximum Chrome edition, which is the one that comes with all of the expansions in one gigantic game box. And we did get it to the table, so I am going to talk about it here shortly. But it did arrive late, unfortunately. So basically all the Canadian backers got it before Christmas. I was hoping to give this to my boys as a Christmas present, but for whatever reason, my information fell through with Quartermaster Logistics, who were shipping the game, and Restoration Games kind of dropped the ball to a certain extent. There was a bit of communication with various people. They eventually sent me the game, and I did receive it and did get to play it, so I will talk about it here. But first, I'll start off with the video gaming side of things.
Are they going to become violent just by playing Grand Auto Theft and Halo in these games? Yes.
I want to mention that my previous video for the games played in January, I had a couple of great comments in terms of people who are wanting to add their expertise in terms of Baldur's Gate 3 and how to approach the game. So thank you very much to Pixality7902 and Corey7239 for your comments and your tips and suggestions. If anybody's interested in diving into Baldur's Gate 3 and is very overwhelmed as I was by the game, go back to that video, check out the comments by those two people in particular. There's some helpful stuff to get you started there. The first little video game I picked up, for whatever reason, it popped into my head that when I was young, I used to really enjoy a game called Scorched Earth, which was kind of this artillery game where you each had a little tank and you were firing various munitions back and forth across at each other, trying to destroy the other person's tank or vehicle or whatever it was. And I thought, there's got to be something along those lines that somebody's done at some point. So I looked it up on Steam, and sure enough, there was this game called ShellShock Live, which I purchased, that pretty much replicates that Scorched Earth experience. It's definitely the type of thing I was looking for, and I played it with my kids, and my younger son Wyatt in particular enjoyed it quite a bit, and I've played it with him. Paul also picked it up on Steam, and he and I have played it remotely against each other a little bit, and I've been kind of working through some of the solo campaign stuff in order to unlock weapons. The game has literally hundreds of unlockable weapons that you can fire at each other, and it's a lot of fun. So my initial rating of ShellShock Live is 7.5 out of 10 as just being a fun experience, nothing spectacular, but pretty much what I was looking for. Now, the game that was a big hit for me that I hinted at last month in my games played in January was Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I've never played an Assassin's Creed game before, and initially I tried to start with Assassin's Creed 2, but I couldn't get everything up and running on my computer. I think there was issues with it recognizing my controller or something like that. And I'm glad it didn't, because I then turned to Odyssey, which I had purchased from a previous Steam sale for some ridiculously low price, and it was sitting in my library, so I downloaded that game and started playing it, and I was like, this is what I was looking for when I was starting into Baldur's Gate 3. This is a open world adventure light RPG with a storyline, with a lot of different characters you can talk to and choices you can make when you talk to them, with a very small and manageable inventory and upgrade system. And it's just a fast moving game. The graphics in it are beautiful. Just walking through this world, there were even a couple times where I paused the game, pulled out my phone, snapped photos of the screen, just because I thought the amazing visuals in the game were quite stunning. And I was really impressed with how in-depth the game researched both ancient Greek history and ancient Greek mythology. And what really drove this home was I was watching a YouTuber whose channel is called Archaeology with Flint Dibble. Now, this Flint Dibble fellow is just a wonderful archaeologist who devotes a lot of energy to debunking pseudo-archaeology and all these people making ridiculously absurd claims in the field of archaeology and history and that sort of thing. And so I was watching one of his live streams where they were talking about a new book that had come out called A Periodic Table of Greek Mythology, edited by Miri Teixeira. And early in that live stream, I left a comment in chat. Basically, I just wanted to leave a comment of support for them that would just help a little bit with the YouTube algorithm to bring some attention to the video that was being played. I certainly didn't expect them to address my comment. However, one of the guys did latch onto it, and this is what he said.
And that's the best place to go to help support the initiative of working classes as well. So
I just noticed Josh in the comments saying that Assassin's Creed Odyssey and gives him a degree of expertise here, and I 1,000,000% agree with him. Almost all of my Greek mythology knowledge didn't start with Assassin's Creed, but I'm still playing Assassin's Creed.
George lives in that game.
Literally, I live in that world.
Yeah.
Legitimately, when I was like first discovering and like wanted to learn more, Assassin's Creed Odyssey Discovery mode is where I spent a lot of time.
Yeah.
I use it in
This
the
like little
classroom,
tour
I
guide.
play it at home. It's just
now that I have a computer that can handle streaming some games, I might try to stream that game a little bit.
That'd be cool.
I think that'll be fun to sort of talk about how it depicts ancient Athens in different places, because they did such a great job of getting in touch with scholars to figure out how to portray those spaces, and I think in that sense it's one of the best games, especially looking at the photo of Matt Damon as Odysseus, and every single classicist in the world is groaning over this, and it's just like, no, why did they screw this up? Why did they screw this up? Look at him. He looks like, I don't know, what the heck is this?
So that kind of blew me away that there was that much attention to detail by the designers of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and the more I've played the game, the more I've just been super impressed with that aspect of it. As of me recording this video in the third week of March, I have a little over 100 hours played in the game, and my rating at this point is 9.5 out of 10. It's so great. The only minor niggles I have so far are, after 100 plus hours, the gameplay is feeling a little bit samey. I feel like I'm doing kind of the same thing over and over and over again, but at least I'm enjoying what I'm doing, so it's not too bad. The leveling up system is, the pace at which it happens, I think, is too high, because every time you level up, you got to also upgrade your armor and your weapons and your gear and your abilities and that sort of thing. So there's a bit of administration with each level up, and that seems to be happening very frequently and is taking time away from the gameplay. And I'm also getting a little bit sick of these fake Greek accents that all the characters are talking to me in. I'm like, couldn't you at least hire people whose first language is Greek, who speak English, so that you have the genuine Greek accents? There's got to be people in Greece who are good voice actors. I don't know why you have to hire English-speaking people putting on fake Greek accents, but whatever. The other thing is, I wish I spoke Greek, because all the NPCs, as you're walking around this vast world that really feels like a living world, because all the NPCs are walking around their daily tasks, talking to themselves, talking to each other, but they're all talking in Greek, so it'd be fun to know what they were saying. But this is my first experience with an Assassin's Creed game. I'm absolutely loving it. I'm already anticipating when this game is finished, going on to Assassin's Creed Black Flag, playing as a pirate, and Assassin's Creed Origins probably in ancient Egypt. So this is a series that I could definitely see spending time with over the long term. Now let's get on to the board games. Even though this first couple of games I'm going to be talking about here, I played in digital format. So the first one is a cooperative board game called Burgle Bros, which I started playing on Steam because I had purchased it some time ago on Steam, and then I realized it was also available on Board Game Arena, so I tried that implementation as well, and I ended up playing about 7 games of Burgle Bros because it's a very simple, easy to learn cooperative game. So being a cooperative game, is very easy to play solo. I just played with 2 to 3 characters and blasted through games, and I went through a bit of a roller coaster with this one. I started off with a fairly high opinion of the game, thinking, okay, this is really simple, easy to get into, but really cleverly designed and fun. After a couple of games, my opinion dropped. I was like, man, there's just so much luck dependence. You're winning or losing the game really relies so much on luck. Then after a couple more games, I realized, okay, there's strategies I can implement to try to mitigate those luck factors, and my opinion went up a bit. And then after a couple more games, I was like, no, this luck element is just too high, and my opinion dropped again. So what it really comes down to is, because it's such a simple and easy game to learn, the random chance of the game does a lot of heavy lifting in the game design. So it's really kind of the exact opposite of a cooperative game like Spirit Island, which is very, very difficult to learn how to play well, but it doesn't rely heavily on luck. It really relies on that player skill. So that's why that really is the more enjoyable game in the long run. Now, like I said, this is a clever design. Burgle Bros does have some interesting things going for it. It has a decent variety of characters and equipment and building layouts, and it's certainly a unique design in this cooperative game space. But just all those luck elements, the random layout of every room that you're going through, the random dice rolls to try to crack safes, the random cards you acquire when you succeed in doing so, it can get really frustrating. So while I was initially thinking about giving the game about an 8 out of 10, ultimately I settled on what I feel is a fairly generous 7 out of 10, as long as I can play with the house rules that I can start with more stealth tokens than 3 to give myself a better chance of actually getting through the game. Now, in terms of implementations, the Steam version versus the Board Game Arena version, they both had their pros and cons. The Board Game Arena version, I think I liked it a bit better, although I found it to be slightly buggy, which was kind of frustrating. Oh, there's a friggin' spider crawling at me. So if BGA could work out those bugs, it would be a better experience playing on there, but for now I think I would play on Steam. The next board game is one called Darwin's Journey, which is one I've had my eye on for a while because I've heard so many very positive reviews about the game, and I wanted to give it a try. So I fired it up on Board Game Arena. I went through their tutorial there, which is a very good tutorial, but it's such a complex game. I didn't really fully understand everything that was going on. I just kind of dove in and played against the AI just to get a feel for the game. And at its heart, it's a very basic worker placement game, where basically you're just doing 20 worker placements throughout the course of the entire game, unless you get your extra worker, in which case you're going to be doing a few more. But very quickly what you realize is that one placement will trigger an effect, which will turn a knob, which will push a button, which will flip a switch, which will have these cascading chaining effects, which is what's cool about the game design. But it's also why the weight of the game is a very high 3.91 out of 5 on BoardGameGeek. So it's considered to be a very heavy, complex game. And truthfully, like I said, I didn't fully understand everything that was going on in the game, although I managed to almost beat the AI. I lost by 7 points, 104 to 97 versus the easy AI on Board Game Arena. That site also tracks the game duration, so it took me 72 minutes to play my first game against the computer. I'm really normally not into these heavy Euro-style games. What partially appealed to me about this game, though, is that even though it is a complex Euro game, the theme is definitely cleverly woven into this complex web of game mechanisms. And it really appears to have quite a high level of variability with all the random setup elements. And so while I might be tempted to try it again on BGA if I do another overview of the rules to fully understand what was happening, I've removed it from my wish list. I don't feel like this is a game that I need to physically own and really explore a lot. In terms of a rating, I ended up giving Darwin's Journey a 7 out of 10. It's tough because I can see the cleverness in the design and the fun thematic elements of it, but in terms of just being an enjoyable experience, it didn't quite hit for me, even though, like I said, I would be willing to try it again potentially. Although now that I think about it, I can't see myself coming back to it on my own. If somebody else requested to play it with me in person, absolutely, I would definitely jump for the opportunity, but I don't think I'll be seeking it out for myself. Next up in my board game list, going as usual from my lowest rated game of the month to highest rated of the month, is Thunder Road Vendetta Maximum Chrome, this gigantic game I got through Kickstarter. This game is essentially Mad Max the board game in that it is a racing game. However, you don't even put the finish line on the board until one player's vehicles have been completely eliminated from play. And then at that point, it's the first player to get a vehicle to the finish line wins the game. So it's a combat-heavy, destructive game of mayhem and racing, and what it does really well. To give an example, in our first play of the game, I had this moment where one of my cars crashed into an opponent's car, which sent my opponent's car flying over a ramp. It then landed on top of one of my other cars, which bumped it and sent it careening off the board, and I ultimately ended up destroying my own vehicle as a result. So that's the type of chaos that can ensue during this game. And what was awesome is I did play it with both my boys, and Evan just completely embraced the chaos. He was intentionally setting his own vehicles on fire in order to get the movement boosts that gave him, with the risk that his vehicle would ultimately get destroyed, which is inevitably what happened. But the first time I played it, I played 4-player actually, with myself, my 2 boys, and with Paul, and we had a fun time together. My boys enjoyed it so much that both of them have requested it multiple times since, and I did get a couple of plays of this game in February. It's a really hard game to rate because it's an absolutely ideal game to play with my boys, and we have a lot of fun when we play it together. But if I want to rate this game individually in comparison to all the other games I own, it's not going to be one that I'm turning to play with my adult gaming friends, for example. So that's always the tricky thing about rating these things. I used to divide my board game ratings into 5 points out of 10 for my objective opinion on the game, how good I thought the game design was, and then 5 points out of 10 based on my fun factor for it, and those combined would be my 10 out of 10. But I sort of gave that up and just decided to go mostly by fun factor, and as a result, I give this game a 7.5 out of 10, still a pretty high rating. Paul gave it an 8 out of 10, Evan a 9 out of 10, and Wyatt gave it a 9.9 out of 10. So even though it's not, for me, a top tier game, it absolutely does what it does really well and provides us with a really fun family gaming experience. Moving on now to Naga Raja, a game I talked about recently, just a month or 2 ago, and I was talking about how the more I play this game, the more I enjoy it and the more I think highly of it. This time it's Wyatt, my younger son, who requested that I play it with him, and Wyatt ended up thinking it was an okay game, but just not his favorite. Probably a little bit too abstract and clinical for him, even though it has this really cool theme of being Indiana Jones style archaeologist exploring an ancient temple and finding artifacts and stuff like that. Just, I think it's not really his type of game. I rate the game 7.5 out of 10. Paul in the past has given it 7 out of 10, and Wyatt gives it a 7.5 out of 10. Next up is Super Motherload, a game that combines deck building, in other words, creating and building up your own special deck of cards, with tile laying as you dig down into the dirt and try to acquire gems and precious metals and stuff so that you can spend those to get better cards for your hand and ultimately end up with the most points. It's a game I've enjoyed for years, and in this game I really focused on hitting all of the minor achievement cards for kind of quick, simple points on as many turns as I could, and ended up having a lot of success with it. Ended up with a pretty high score. I rate the game 8.5 out of 10. Paul in the past has rated this game 8 out of 10, but this time he decided it was more like an 8.5 out of 10, so we both share a high opinion of Super Motherload. I got back to one of my newer games next, the Lord of the Rings Duel from Middle-earth. This has been a hit game not just for me, but for the board gaming community as a whole, it feels like. Previously, I'd only played it with Paul, but this time I taught it to my 13-year-old son, Wyatt. And because Wyatt is the type of person who loves the dark side, he's a big fan of Darth Vader and the dark side in Star Wars as well as in Lord of the Rings. He would only play as the Sauron team, but he loved the game. He beat me in our first game with a board majority victory, and he went on to request another play and then another play, and ultimately I ended up with 5 plays of this game in the month of February. Most, I think about 4 of those were with Wyatt because, like I said, this was a huge hit for him. As you might know already, this is just a stripped down, simplified version of a very popular two-player game. Whose name has completely slipped my mind. I'll have to put it on screen here. I know the expansion I had was called Pantheon. But anyways, I can't say enough good things about this game. It's just such a great little two-player game. Very simple to learn, simple to play, really quick to play once you know what you're doing. I rated 8.5 out of 10. Paul had rated it 8.5 out of 10 as well. And Wyatt gives it a perfect 10 out of 10. And he said it is tied for second favorite game of all time alongside Raptor, with his #1 game being Arcadia Quest. So that was pretty cool. I was really happy with how much Wyatt latched onto this one. Back to cooperative games now with the two-player co-op game Sky Team. Paul and I continue to try to successfully land airplanes together, and there are so many different elements in the base game that you can add in as you try to land at different airports. And now that I have the expansion, I think it's called Turbulence, it adds even more elements that you can kind of mix in and out. One new to me element that we tried was the wind mechanism, which, like everything else in the game, is so clever, and they capture a very thematic aspect of landing an aircraft, which is trying to turn so that you're landing into the wind, so you can land at as slow a speed as possible, but using just the most simple rules and mechanisms. And every time I add a new mechanism and try something different, I'm just even more impressed with the game. So that wind element was super cool. We have continued to play around with some of the yellow difficulty, which is the second easiest difficulty of airports, and we did crash an airplane, which we don't do all that often, but we also had 1 or 2 successful landings as well. So at this point, I have played most of the base game modules and even a few of the expansion ones, and I do rate the game 9 out of 10. Paul had recently bumped his rating up to a perfect 10 out of 10 for this one, and in the past, Evan has given it 8.5 out of 10, and Charlie has given it an 8. And then the final game is one that we played with a new to me expansion, and when this is Planet Unknown, played with the Planet Unknown Supermoon expansion that I had picked up through Kickstarter. So talking about modules, this expansion adds in several kind of mini modules to enhance different elements of the base game. So we have the moons, which they do add an extra interesting aspect to the game as long as they don't clash with the goal cards in play. We intentionally set it up so that a player wouldn't have conflicting things going on with his moon and with the goal cards on the table. So the moons were kind of interesting, although I don't know if they're all that necessary to add to the gameplay. They're all right. There were a couple new tile types. The salvage tiles were a nice extra option. The single square tiles had minimal effect in the game, but could also be occasionally useful. The new planets the game provided were mostly interesting. There were only a few new corporations, but they do seem pretty cool. There are new Civ cards, which seems like a bit of a mixed bag, although it's always nice to have more variety. Same with the new event cards, more variety, although I did remove a few of them that didn't look all that great. So overall, it does add some nice little extras to the game. It doesn't change much up other than the moons aspect of it, which isn't all that exciting, to be honest with you. When we tried it out, Paul did amazingly well on covering his entire planet with tiles, but since that was his main focus, he kind of more or less ignored all the other aspects, peripheral aspects of the game, and so his final score wasn't as high as mine. And typically, when I get an expansion for the game, more often than not, adding the expansion to the game will cause me to bump up the rating by maybe half a point or 1 point in my 10-point rating, but I will say that my rating remains unchanged with this expansion because it does add a little bit more variety, a couple little interesting things, but ultimately nothing all that exciting. So it's a very highly rated game for me, though. It is a 9 out of 10, and for Paul it's a perfect 10 out of 10. For Evan as well, he had rated it a 9.5 out of 10, so overall it's still an excellent game, and the expansion elements do add a couple interesting things to do with it. So that was my February gaming. Please let me know what games you've been playing. What have you been especially enjoying? Is there anything coming up that you got your eye on that I should check out that you're really excited about? You know I love to hear about it. Please let me know, and thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time. Cheers. There are literally... It's a pretty... where you're basically doing just 20 worker placement games throughout the course of the... this time, though, my younger son Wyatt, who my 14-year-old, this time, though, it was my third. This time, back to co-op.